Hello YouTube and welcome back to World of Warplanes with Wadres. I almost said warships, if that says anything about my regular video fodder. But no, today it is definitely Warplanes, and well, just kind of wanted to talk about Warplanes a little bit in regards to a little bit of what's been going on. With World of Warships, the only thing that's really been going on lately is grinding out the Fly Strike Win event, and my recent pickup of the Graf Zeppelin, of which most of you have already seen the replay review video of. So overall, just kind of been getting a little burned out with World of Warships, as I'm sure I've mentioned previously. So I'm kind of ducking into World of Warplanes a good bit lately. And, well, I've been picking up a good number of planes over the last few days. Something else that's been going on in World of Warplanes is that they've had a couple of special operations going on where you can gain access to unique modules that have better engineering rates, where the improvements that they offer are better and the detriments that they offer aren't quite so severe. So I've been enjoying just trying to get at least into the top 100 for the contests on those in regards to the overall ratings, rankings, however you decide to define them. And on top of that, I've also just been working with a number of the planes that I've been picking up along the way, including the one that you were watching in the background right at the moment, which is the Russian heavy fighter, just about the only Russian heavy fighter in the game right now, the Tu-1. And one of the things that I am enjoying about this plane to a point is just the fact that she has massive, massive guns. That when they hit the target, oh my goodness, the damage they do. But the catch is, they have to actually hit the target. And these heavier autocannons, well, they aren't exactly pumping out an incredible amount of lead over a short period of time. They're kind of basically relegated to very short bursts, and you've got to hope your aim is right on point, because otherwise your shell's just going to go sailing way off into the distance. I figure that playing a heavy fighter is kind of like playing a battleship almost in World of Warships. You've got lots of heavy armament, you've got lots of heavy ordnance, but oh boy, if you miss, it costs you. The flip side, of course, being that your heavy fighters tend to be your faster aircraft, whereas your light fighters, which I guess are more the equivalent of your destroyers, tend to be your slower but more maneuverable. So I guess that's an interesting way of sizing it up. And then, of course, you've also got your multi-role fighters, which are roughly equivalent, I think, to your cruisers as far as fighters go. Then, of course, you have your attack aircraft and you have your actual bombers, which I suppose, given some of their distinctions, are probably closer to aircraft carriers as far as their effective role in most World of Warplanes matches. They can do a lot of damage to reasonably specific targets, but their defense capabilities, as far as anything to defend themselves, is kind of really lacking, unless you happen to get one that has a good number of turrets. So yeah, it's kind of interesting trying to figure out exactly what which plane has which effective basic role by comparison to World of Warships. Now, one of the other things that I will say about getting into the heavy fighters especially is just that I've kind of used them as my jumping point for getting into, I guess you could say, the boom and zoom type strategies, where you kind of start at high altitude or at a long distance, power in, charge, attack the enemy in a simple attack run, and then just kind of run off back into the distance, taking your speed into account to either regain altitude or just gain distance on your target before you turn around and basically rinse and repeat. This is something that a lot of your, well, even some of the lighter fighters like the BF-109 benefit from. a vast majority of the American fighters seem to benefit from it as well. I mean, even the de Havilland Vampire benefits from it, considering it has its autocannons, and yeah, it does have its maneuverability, but it's really more reliant on just kind of getting in, hitting at distance, and pulling out before anybody even realizes you're really there. Whereas planes like, say, the Spitfire or even the Zero, which are focused more on their maneuverability, they're meant to get in close behind a target and just stay in behind them until the target's dead. Boom and zoom fighters tend to come in from above, catch targets by surprise before they can even really maneuver or evade, and really just try to do as much damage in a very short period of time as possible without really getting into any sort of long, drawn-out, turning, spinning, wild engagements. And, of course, the heavy fighters are kind of extremes in this case because their maneuverability really is, well, it's not exactly non-existent. If you want non-existent, look at some of the bombers. But their maneuverability isn't exactly stellar, so they don't really get much benefit out of any sort of maneuvering engagement at all whatsoever. The only thing they can really outmaneuver on a regular basis anyway are like your bombers and your attack aircraft. So they really kind of tend to depend very much on the boom and zoom for any real engagement characteristics at all. And on top of the fact their heavy armament is perfect for the boom and zoom strategies, because they can line up sights, and as soon as you have something in sight at long range, as long as you're understanding where to aim for your lead and everything, you can drop shells on a target 3,000-4,000 yards out and, 3,000, 4,000 feet away, and just absolutely obliterate them before they even know what hits them. I mean, Lord knows I've taken shots at targets in my TU-1, and even the other plane you're actually going to be seeing in this video, which is the BVP-203, where I've taken shots at long distance, and I've just wiped out light fighters in single shots from full health, and I kind of imagine them sitting there with their heads spinning around like, what the fuck hit me? It's, in some ways it can be fun, but at the same time, having been on the receiving end of it myself, it is also extremely annoying because it's like I didn't have any chance to do anything. It really made you feel, it really makes you feel very helpless when you're stuck with a heavy fighter in that situation. To the point where, in some ways, I actually end up watching my mini-map sometimes more than I end up watching what I'm doing, and I've ended up running into the ground on a couple of occasions doing that, because I'm watching to see if I've got a heavy fighter bearing in on me quickly that I need to work to do some sort of evasion or whatever. But on the other hand, I have managed to evade some heavy fighters in the past where, or even just in the last couple of days, where I saw them coming on the mini-map. At the last second I dodge, their shells go sailing past me, and then I'm in something that's maneuverable enough where I can take advantage of that, come in behind them, and take them down, and they've wasted their chance. Kind of like a destroyer charging in on a battleship that's just fired off an HE salvo and missed every single shell. So yeah, that's definitely a nice little added bonus in some ways to playing the heavy fighters, is that, yeah, you get good damage, but if you miss and you don't have the speed to carry through after your attack run, well, you're kind of SOL, aren't you? So overall, not a bad match in the TU-1. I got the McGuire medal, which is 400 capture points in a heavy fighter in a single sortie. Also the Winged Legend for getting 14,000 points in a single match. Plus I maxed out the aircraft type requirements for heavy fighters. So definitely some good work on my part for that run. Not exactly a close match, but definitely a good one to say the least. But it still kind of ended up making me feel like I could up the ante. So next match in line, I actually decided to pull out my BVP 203 and see what I could do there. Now the BVP 203 is a German heavy premium fighter at tier 8 as opposed to tier 7 like the TU-1. And, well, let's just say it still kind of has its own heavy guns as well. Now, granted, the TU-1 has, I think, 45mm cannons, whereas the BVP has 37mm. And, oh boy, do these guns hit... Oh boy, do these guns hurt when they hit, is what I meant to say. I really hate it when I stumble over my tongue like that. But, yeah, it definitely wreaks all kinds of havoc, especially when you get some bombers in its sights at long range. Oh, it just loves chewing them up. And in this case, I was actually making a point of hunting down the bombers because, well, this was during the event. One of the things that was especially notable for the event to get the premium equipment was that you needed to score critical hit damage. And what is better for that than an aircraft with big guns shooting at big targets to just kind of maximize the amount of damage that you do overall. And yeah, it definitely worked out in my favor. I did end up in the top 100 for both the mid-tier and, or I should say second period and third period, which are mid-tier and high-tier units for the event. Kind of like you get mid-tier and high-tier versus low-tier for World of Warships as well. Mid-tier is usually about tier 5 to 7, whereas high-tier you're looking at tier 8 or above, so yeah. And of course in World of Warplanes they're actually broken into specific periods where the equipment is specific to those, again, periods, due to the amount of technological advancement, the equipment that they can put in, and just what all comes out of them when they are upgraded, calibrated, so on and so forth. So, and of course there's higher cost to some of the higher tier equipment as well. It's not like it's, say, 15,000 credits for a tier 1, 2, or 3 piece of equipment. No. It's 15,000 credits for tier 1 for a period 1 piece of equipment, 125,000 for a period 2 piece of equipment, and 250,000 for a period 3 piece of equipment. So your equipment costs go up dramatically as you move up through the tiers. So that's something to consider as well. Now, granted, World of Warships kind of does this by the introduction of slots as opposed to having a different price grade for the equipment, but, well, yes, I guess 6 of one, half dozen of the other. The basic result in the end being that it still kind of costs you more to outfit your airplane in the long run as opposed to short run. But even if it's near the switch, of course, being that in the case of World of Warships, the slots have individual cost for that slot in particular, whereas the warplanes, you're not sticking a $15,000 piece of equipment from period 1 into the same equipment type slot for a period 3 aircraft. So regardless, you're spending 250,000 credits on a single piece of equipment, whether it's a tier 3 plane or a... well, if it's a tier 3 plane, you're only spending that 15,000 credits. If it's a tier 8 plane, even if it's only that one slot, you're still spending 250,000 credits regardless of whether or not you're in that one slot. Whereas in World of Warships, say it only has 2 upgrade slots, well, you're only going to pay, what, the 175,000 credits? No. 675,000 credits for those 2 slots to be filled. So, yeah, as opposed to being full cost of, say, tier 10 and 9 slots with, at, what, 2 or 3 million credits each. So there is that. But the equipment that I was actually going for helps out, one, the BVP 203, because it is a, in the particular case that I'm mentioning, it was a piece of engine armor that provided better resistance to damage for the engines, and it also had a lower reduction rate to the actual cruise speed of the aircraft, or the boost speed of the aircraft. So it was a win-win. You get better damage protection, and your cruise speed is not affected as badly. And there's the McGuire medal again in the BVP 203. Just goes to show, you go after the right targets, you get some good medals, I guess. Now, the one thing that I do have to say about the heavy fighters is, technically speaking, I probably should not have tried getting into a turning engagement with this P-1056, I believe it is. Because if he had actually been trying to turn circles around me, he probably would have outturned me regardless. But because he decided to go zigzag, he at least gave me a chance to do better. And if I could even just clip him a little bit, I can alter his maneuverability and kill him. So yeah, 1056, sorry. So yeah, it's really interesting trying to figure out how to make certain circumstances work out for you. Especially when you have some aircraft that are technically the same class as you, but still substantially more maneuverable. I mean, even the BF-109Z is far more maneuverable than the BVP-203 in a turning engagement. The only thing the BVP-203 really has going for it is its single-shot firepower, and it has exceptionally good airspeed, especially in boost. I've had the thing going up to 550 miles an hour almost, and still be reasonably maneuverable. Whereas others, even at tier 8, they can really only get up to like the upper 480s in some cases. So yeah, I think the other thing is that the BVP is also nice because it's sort of a hybrid jet prop job as opposed to being straight up prop or straight up jet. It kind of makes it a little bit more interesting in some regards. And unfortunately, I did end that match off by colliding with an IL-2, but I still managed to take him out as well. And, yep, nice long string of medals again. This time 18,000 personal points, Conqueror, McGuire Medal, and Winged Legend. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And I shall go ahead and let you all go from there. Have a good one. Happy hunting, folks.